bienvenidos a la sesión de Ciencias en Computación y de Ingeniería. Pregunta para los expositores, van en inglés o en español. English for you? Or...
In the case, it's two in English y one in Spanish.
One in Spanish. And the first one?
The second. The second in Spanish and the fifth and the end in English.
Okay, so we are going to start. Thanks for being here. And Julio Alberto Ramírez Montañez is going to present evaluation of a recurrent neural network LSTM for detection and excellence of particles PMA. Please start.
Good afternoon. I have to about with my this project, and the content in this presentation is the short introduction, mathematical methods, discussion and result, conclusion and preference. First, the industrial developed environmental pollution. In this time, the industry is very big, but especially at the daily life, and generally application of gadgets, for example, the cars, for the moving of the areas, big areas. But the big problem is the pollution, the garbage. In this world is focused in the air pollution. Remember, in the image, you can see two difference. In this moment, in the first is the gadgets for the good or productive in maths, and the second is the contaminate. The air pollution, this is a particle matter. The acronym is the PM, and this includes all particles in suspension. This is the origin natural or artificial. For example, in the first image, you can see the ash of the volcano, fire, and this is the both is natural, or in the fire in the forest, or provoked with the people fire the garbage. In the field is the industry. Or the particle matter is classified with the size. For example, PM10 is the particle matter with size is less or equal to 10 micrometers. And PM 2.5 is similar, is the less or equal at 2.5 micrometers. And the ultrafine is the 0.1 micrometers. The excellence and the health damage. The excellence is very important for, it's important for means because the people is exposed excellence is very normally damage health damage. For example, cardiovascular. And in Mexico, the norm on the stamp is the norm 025 SS81 2014. Is established average daily concentration for 75 microgram per cubic meter, and annually concentrate the 14 microgram per cubic meter. It's very important because the sensor is used for the research in a frequent time. For the means of the average, you need the frequent time of the registers. That is the neural networks. The neural network is a new algorithm for modeling comparing a nonlinear particles in this case. But wire and macros and WirePit is a pioneer in the development of a computer model of neural network. In the image, you can see a neural network basic. We can see 4 layers, and one layer the input, two-layer tile and one layer for the ending. Next, Orbit and Synchro propose the LSTM model or long short-term memory. It's a recurrent neural network. Long short-term memory, so recurrent neural network, is the principal network is this, and the recurrent is in this case. But he can input gate, internal state, forward gate, output gate, and seed mode activation. Because forward gate, because the data is used for serious time, and the network is modeling for data in this case. And the equation for the scribe is this. The W is the way for the connect with our neurons. This project is about the Mexico City. It's here. It has the data set of Terrana. It's in the automatic monitoring, it's neural monitoring and atmospheric automatic. We can see a different station in different places. In this case, in this paper, it's only marked in the MER or Merced because it's the station is in the 2000 to 2018. And my neural network is that use two neural networks. The first is the model neural network is use a LSTM model. He has 3 layers. The first has 50 neurons, and the high layers contain 255 neurons. This values is for the heuristic sorry, I remember.
Trial and error.
Huh?
Trial and error.
Trial and error. Thank you. And use full connect. The third layer is a simple level because the modeling is only used for the second layers. And the second network is a predictive network. It's only used perceptor network. And the fifth layer is varied in 3 different values. And in this case, it's 24, 48, and 72 because it depends on the hours predicting of the excellence. This is the complete model. It's have 5 layers. This is the modeling and predicting. For evolution model, we can use the mean square error and root mean square error because this is the difference between the real data and the modeling for the networks. This is employee use. Initially, is the set the data because the data set is free for the internet, but in the 2000 the RAMA only had 15 stations and the last year had 24 stations. I need to the station is consecutive in the time. Next is the eliminate the outliers. The outliers are points because the station have problem with the regression. This point is replaced with mainly in before time and after time for conserve the nonlinear pattern. The next is the concatenate the vector of the use for the one. And the left state is evaluate the result for the first network. You need the fifth network. The second is necessarily the group of the dataset is the original. First is to the set of the 24 groups. You could calculate the average of the day. Next is the training the second neural network for the excellent dates and nonsense. And finally is evaluate the two neural networks. For the time is 3 intervals. I have 50 evolution continuous. For the accuracy is the accuracy. Sorry. For the result is this. In the modeling, I had a root mean square error the 18.0342. Is you can see at the line orange is the true value, and the blue is the predicted. It's very similar, but it's not equal. But the important is the means. In the net figure, you can see the means on the average on the 2018, and you can see this day is the average excellence, but the predicted is no as same, but is this day is an excellence. In this case, this points on the outliers. In this section, we can see a point orange. It's a predictive with a points modeling with the first neural networks. And this, we can see a daily excellence, but the predictive is not with the excellence because it's very similar, but it's not equal. And my accuracy is the 89%. Evaluate from a continuum, you can see at this value. For the 3 times, is very constant for the accuracy for the 89%, but in the 32 hours, in a few moments, the neural networks we cannot predict it, the excellence, because we cannot 32 hours is a lot of data is incomplete or is outliers for the neural network is complete. The thing is the excellent or no excellence. And my conclusion is the long-term memory or LC model is predictive capacity for different time intervals. Other possibility is a future work, is a proposed other method for the propose the data layers for the plots, and is the compared with other methods, for example the SVM for characterization for the excellence. And my reference.
Thanks a lot. Questions? No questions?
I'm a little curious. I'm not sure if you say the reason, but in the first modeling stage, the first 2 layers, you say something about the number of layers for first and second layer. Number of neurons, right?
Yes.
42 and 256.
No, 50 the first layers and 256 neurons.
Why 256?
Because it's in the articles it's very common, and I proved that others did it, but the result is not improved.
is there a reason behind using 265 in the papers? I don't know.
Yes.
Is there?
It's an base for the no,
Excuse me.
the paper on
This
the base is this on the is this the one, and use the similar networks. Number the network is similar.
Neurons in the layer.
Networks is similar.
This is because I think it's a lot of layers for intermediate, a lot of neurons for an intermediate layer. So maybe for posterior works, suggestion, revision of investigation about trying another number of, or maybe trying to find the reason of why use that number of neurons. Thanks.
Because it's only inside the neurons, but for me it's only for my more study. Because in these days it's only the use for the Python and the Keras Tuki, and it's very interactive, but you can see modify this value.
Okay. Thanks.
Questions? No? No questions? I wonder how works the memory short-term and long-term? How does it work? So why they need the...
Well, the memory, because it's very used for the theorems at time series values. It's very this number is very is more used for this time.
Do you have to update these values or they are like during the processing of the neural network you have to update the values of the memory or they are fixed?
Don't remember, sorry.
This way, this memory is used for which part of the neural network? Is for the weights or for what?
For this is in this case the neural network is with is layers for the components.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Another question? Okay. So, thank you for it. And we have I don't know how to say diploma in English. ¿No? Diploma o reconocimiento.
Certificate.
Certificate. Okay, I have a certificate for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody.
¿Cómo?
Orange mountain.
It's okay. Okay. As the technological development increases, engineering systems are becoming more complex. So it is important to guarantee the reliability and availability of those systems. In order to do so, we need advanced maintenance programs. If that is not the case, we will see more of these accidents or failures. This is an aircraft turbine failure. An advanced maintenance program requires a prognosis model. This prognosis model will take some measurements of your systems from sensors, and it will try to compute the remaining useful life of your system to act before the failure occurs. And there are basically three types of prognosis models: physics-based models, data-driven models, and hybrid models. Physics-based models are very accurate, but you need to know the system very well, and you need to know the physics of the failures. And when you don't know that, so your system is very complex, there are many interactions, you need to use data-driven methods, which are basically statistical methods and also machine learning. The paper is using a case study of a turbofan, a very common complex system. The database comes from NASA. It's a public database. It's synthetic data. It's not from real turbines. The synthetic data was created using this simulator. It has 14 parameters, so the simulator can simulate the whole life of one turbine since its beginning till it develops a failure and it stops working completely. The life is characterized by 58 sensor signals, but the NASA database only has 21 sensor signals. Also, the database is divided in 4 groups. The reason of this is that each group has different complexity of data, even by the number of operating conditions and the number of failure modes that each turbine can have. Also, each group has its training units and test units. The information of each turbofan is an ID number, operation time in flight cycle, 3 operating condition parameters. This is basic information for a turbofan, and 21 sensor signals, temperatures, pressures, speeds, among others. It is important to point out that there is no remaining useful life information for training, only for testing. So we have to label the data manually. The engineer has to do that. This is the methodology. The database is basically training data and testing data. The training data is normalized, then labeled, so we can do the split into training data and validation data. We train our model and then we test our model using 2 different metrics, so we can compare our model with past works using the same database. And the data normalization, well, it's very common to use the Z-score normalization, which use the mean and standard deviation of the data in order to normalize the data. But in order to use this Z-score normalization, we have to modify the equation a little bit for this database. The reason comes from the following. When you plot the 3 operating conditions, the altitude, Mach number, attractor resolver angle, you can see that the data is clustered in 6 groups, meaning 6 operating regions. Pale and gold indicate that there is no relationship between the remaining useful life and the regions. So for the prediction task, it's better to incorporate the information of each region in the normalization. We do that modifying the equation. Here, R stands for the region and F for the sensor. So here is with the normal equation, and this is with the new equation. This is due to the sensor measurements are equally important no matter the operating region, and that's better for the prediction. Okay, for data labeling, there are 2 techniques basically. The first one is proposed by Phil. It is very easy. Here you have the data for one turbine. You have the flight cycles and the measurements for each flight cycle. Phil proposed to use directly as the RUL information the time remaining before the turbine stops working. So if you have 4 cycles, your first remaining useful life will be 3. Then 2, 1, and 0. 0 meaning that the turbine is not working. And as you can see, this means that the health of the system is decreasing linearly, which is not really the case. Hames proposed to use a piecewise function in order to label the data. This is more appropriate because it indicates that the turbine becomes to working in a healthy way. There is a constant remaining useful life. And then after a failure occurs, the system decreases linearly, just after the failure. For feature selection, well, commonly the sensors selected are those which have an increasing or decreasing behavior, such as those. But for this model, we use all the components, the 21 sensors, the 3 operating conditions, and the flight cycles. This is done because we tested their model and it has better results when we use all the data. The prognosis model, well, when you're working with time series, it is better to use dynamical neural networks such as recurrent neural networks or LSTM. but those are more computationally expensive, and that's important if you're working in embedded systems. So we are using multi-layer perceptron. It's less computationally expensive, but the predictions are noisy and with low level of precision. In order to reduce that problem, we use the Kalman filter in order to correct the signal and reduce that noise. This is the model. The multi-layer perceptron is fitted with sensor data so we can have a noisy degradation curve, and the filter tries to reduce that noise. The architecture of the multi-layer perceptron is pretty simple, only 3 layers: the input layer with all the data, an intermediate layer which has only 10 neurons with signal activation function, and an output layer with linear activation function. We use the Levenberg-Marquardt training method. We tested other methods, but this was the best by far. We stopped the training after the generalization error increases. The Kalman filter is an iterative process which tries to estimate the best values using data measurements. In this case, the multi-layer perceptron are the data measurements, and the Kalman filter at first stage does an estimation of the measurement, of the best measurement, and giving a previous measurement and the model of a moving object. Then we compute the Kalman gain. The Kalman gain puts a relative error in the measurement by the multi-layer perceptron and an error in the estimation of the Kalman filter. Then with that Kalman gain we can get our best estimation of the value doing the update stage, and then we repeat the process. Basically this is the Kalman filter. It's pretty simple when you understand it. Those are the results of applying the Kalman filter in 2 different turbines. So you have the current flight cycle and the remaining useful life. As you can see, the multi-layer perceptron predictions, the green line, are pretty noisy, and the Kalman filter is reducing the noise. We use 2 metrics, the mean square error and the exponential error penalization. This one is proposed for prognosis algorithms using this database, the Turbofan database. It is based on this asymmetric function which penalizes more the late predictions than the early predictions, because there are 3 types of predictions. A perfect prediction is when your prediction is equal to your true value. An early prediction is when your prediction is less than your true value, and the late prediction is when your prediction is greater than your true value. This is the most dangerous prediction because it says that you're having time, but the system really doesn't have time. It is going to fail. So in this table, here is the comparison of different multi-layer perceptron models, and the components tested here is the use of Kalman filter and the use of flight cycles. So first, the use of Kalman filter actually reduces the error, as you can see. Here are the total error on each group, and here is the total error with Kalman filter. So as expected, filtering the curve actually helps. And second, when you use flight cycle, it is very, very helpful and important. As you can see, the error decreases a lot from 20,000 to 14,000 in this metric. So I wanted to show this component in special because this component is not usually incorporated in the literature for the training using this database. Here I do the comparison with 4 different models, 2 convolutional neural networks, 1 deep belief neural network, and a pretty complicated model called MOPNI, multi-objective deep belief network ensemble. So it used optimization algorithms along with more than 1 deep belief network. So here we can see that our model is better than the convolutional neural network and the deep belief neural network, but MOPNI is still better. Here, using the exponential error penalization score, we can see the same. In general, our model is better than the two convolutional neural networks and the deep learning neural network, but MOPNI is still better. I want to point out here that considering the complexity of this model and our simple multilayer perceptron of only 10 neurons, considering that the difference in errors is relatively small. So as conclusion, although the use of dynamic neural networks such as recurrent neural networks and LSTM are preferred for time series, those are more computationally expensive. So that's why we use multilayer perceptron. The results indicate that the use of Kalman filter and all the components, especially flight cycles, significantly improves the prediction accuracy, overcoming more complex architectures such as convolutional neural networks and deep learning neural networks. In addition, it should be mentioned that although the labels by the piecewise function turn out to be effective for training, they do not describe completely the pattern degradation of the training data because those labels are a hypothesis. As our recommendations, recent works begin to explore the use of self-labeling techniques which are used for semi-supervised learning problems where there is a small amount of information. So it will be interesting to try to explore this way in order to come up with better labels in order to train this data set. And that's it. And thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mario. Yes, questions? No one? Go on. No questions? No? Have you tried another filters?
No, actually I didn't try any other filter because I was really interested in using Kalman filter.
Why?
Because I see Kalman filter everywhere. So actually in many companies they require you to know something about Kalman filter. So I wanted to try at first Kalman filter and see my results. But later we will try some other filters. I have heard about particle filtering, something like that. And it's also very used, but at first in my first model I wanted to try this.
Or maybe, I don't know, maybe have you tried or have you run that to apply the Kalman filter with another convolutional or something
okay, yeah, that would
But
be.
it is possible or it's not possible?
Yeah, actually it is very possible. The only reason we use multilayer perceptron is because we had less parameters and it is less computationally expensive. But the Kalman filter can be used with another architecture of neural network.
I also have a question. For example, in your table with the results, you have only the results with the NLP plus the Kalman filter.
Yeah.
But do you have some results just the NLP? How it was comparing with the others? Maybe. Okay, of course it's worse, but maybe you can take an idea that with the Kalman filter can we improve this.
Okay,
results.
and see how the Kalman filter improves those models.
Yes.
Yeah, that will be interesting. Thank you.
Okay, question?
I would like to know if the other works work with the same database. Yes, it
Yeah.
works with the same.
Yeah. Those works, the 4 works I'm comparing, those work with the same database. Yeah.
Your the data set for training and for what is it? Training
testing.
and testing. How you divide it?
What?
How was divided?
How was divided?
The percentage of
Actually, the NASA gives you the NASA the data divided in testing data and training data. 50-50. Actually, no.
it should be like
I-
70.
There's table about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
I didn't see it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. You're right.
Okay.
Can I?
Yes.
I'm interested about you saying application of this topic embedded systems.
Mhm.
I'm not sure you say the other method. It's over. I have better numbers than you. What is the name again?
The other methods I compared,
Yeah.
convolutional neural networks.
No,
No,
the one for
the who have better score.
Mons,
Mopnik.
Yeah.
Mopnik.
Okay.
Yeah.
You say it's more computational complex than that.
Yeah.
Is that true? A technique for application of embedded systems? Because I think that this is for airplanes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then you need to have a high rate of response.
Yeah.
So you must have enough data in this model for using in an online system. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Do you think if this configuration is fast enough to act in an online
In an
environment?
online system? Okay, I think it is very accurate, so that it will be very helpful to use that model in an online system. The thing is that actually aerospace companies are not using this kind of model because they don't really trust in the models, so that's the reason people continue working on developing better models. So I don't work in an aerospace company, so I cannot tell you if that kind of network could be used. I don't think so, because they say they don't trust so far in neural networks, and they are using other techniques. But yeah, from my point of view, I will use it. I will use the last one.
Okay, they say thank you. I will give you a great commission to Mario Alberto Olivares.
Gracias.
No.
Rosas, but he's with Alberto Ramirez Montañez. He's going to present the Sherford Dementia patterns in the transcribed conversation using natural language processing.
Sorry for these problems because my partner could not came home here, and I explained his paper, but this for the time is not prepared for me. You can see in Spanish. Bien. El tema es que se va a buscar patrones de demencia en conversaciones usando lenguaje natural, lenguaje natural. Igual, la presentación consta de una breve introducción, detalles y métodos, resultados y la conclusión. Bueno, la demencia. La demencia es un trastorno en el cual la persona pierde herramientas de comunicación, ya sea para hablar o para generar oraciones, como pérdida de memoria. Muchos pacientes tienen demencia, pero no la misma demencia del mismo rango, se puede dividir en diferentes grados de demencia. Aquí en la tabla puedo ver tres tipos de grados de demencia. Early stage, que es una demencia muy moderada, que como se va iniciando. Middle stage, que es una demencia severa. Y la late stage, que es una grado de demencia ya crítico. Bueno, la demencia aquí es para el deterioro de las herramientas de comunicación de la persona, tanto sea para comunicar o para expresarse o comunicar con otras personas. En el estado del arte, aquí vemos 4 artículos diferentes, son diferentes tipos de herramientas. Las más usadas son la máquina de soporte de vectores o SVM, luego de decisiones y varios clasificadores. Por ejemplo, hemos visto que en el primer artículo presentado por Siwan y Ben Singer, usando conversaciones escritas, su decisión tuvo una precisión del 20% de detección de personas con demencia, mientras que las dos venecianas tuvieron 7%. En otros casos, por ejemplo, en el de Kodabas y el de Seth Thomas, se tuvieron porcentajes del 90%, tanto con retos bayesianos como árboles de decisiones. ambos igual conversiones escritas. Mientras que las conversiones con audio, usando SVM, tuvieron 6% de precisión. Dentro de texto, se usó el procesamiento de lenguaje natural con técnicas de lemnización, morfología de segmentación y segmentación de palabras. ¿Qué quiere decir esto? Que en una conversación tengo que dividir la oración principal, las palabras que la conforman, ya sea sujeto, verbo, adverbios y demás. La conversación se basa en la léxica o la gramática de la persona quien está hablando, quien está expresando. También en este caso se usaron técnicas de computación. El dataset o datos vienen de la Carolina Corpus Conversion Dataset. Para que mi compañero pudiera tener acceso a dicho compañero de datos, tuvo que hacer ciertos exámenes de validación de honestidad, de buen manejo de datos y demás. Estos datos no es tan fácil de conseguir, de hecho que los exámenes son bastante tediosos y extensos. Posteriormente las conversaciones, como vienen ya clasificadas por la persona quien las está haciendo junto con el estabilizador, tuvieron que ser removidas. Y también tuvo que distinguir a personas las pausas, los signos gramaticales y demás que no son utilizados para el entrenamiento de las redes, para el comportamiento de predicción. Este objetivo claramente dice que todas una puntuación fue eliminado, las pausas cortas o largas fueron eliminadas, una persona fue eliminado para quedar todo en privacidad. Los métodos analizados o utilizados fue el test de analización, pausas cortas, pausas largas, palabras mal usadas, elección de palabras más usadas también. Y en este caso se utilizó una red neuronal simple, de forma binaria, para clasificar si la persona tiene demencia o no tiene demencia, la cual igual es una neurona, un número de neuronas de 6 neuronas para detectar palabras, la conversación. Aquí está un ejemplo. Tengo ya la oración. Las redes neuronales pueden ser usadas para clasificar texto. En este caso, la palabra de tiene una codificación de 4. La palabra neural tiene una codificación de 73.517 y sucesivamente. Esta codificación viene de un diccionario propio de la librería de Python para el lenguaje natural. La red neuronal consta de 3 capas. 2 capas de 16 nodos iniciales, bueno, inicial e intermedia de 16 nodos, con una activación ReLU. En que la última capa es una activación sigmoide. Todas están conectadas todas por todas. De aquí se seleccionó 62 muestras de personas con demencia y 160 personas con no demencia, para distinguir un 1 si la persona tiene demencia y un 0 si no tiene demencia. Igualmente se usó una mezcla de soporte vectorial. En este caso se dividió la oración en grupos, ya sean sujetos, verbios, adverbios y demás. Los resultados fueron estos. Usando palabras de elecciones con las conversaciones, no hay mucha diferencia tanto las personas con demencia como que sin demencia. Todo va muy similar, lo cual a la red le cuesta distinguir cuando tiene demencia y cuando no. En cambio, con las pausas cortas y pausas largas, sí hay una pequeña diferencia que es más fácil de distinguir. Con las personas con demencia, con las personas sin demencia. Aquí es una gráfica de cajas para distinguir diferencias entre las SVMs con sujetos, adverbios, adjetivos, verbos y palabras cortas. Aquí se puede ver que la persona con demencia, que es la color azul, tiende a omitir sujetos, en cambio personas que sin demencia los tienden a poner siempre están ahí. caso de la red neuronal se utilizó un 70% para entrenar y el resto para validar. Obtiene un porcentaje de predicción de 38.3%. De igual forma, bueno, desde aquí tenemos la gráfica de épocas utilizadas para el entrenamiento de la red. Donde se puede ver que a partir de 25 la validación ya no puede mejorar más, manteniéndose el %. En el caso de la máquina de soporte de vectores, igual se usa 70% de entrenamiento, 30% de validación y obteniendo un porcentaje de 86.43%. Aquí ya conclusiones. Dicen que para poder tener una partida de dimensión o no dimensión se tienen que aplicar un mayor número de datos para entrenar la red. De otra forma también, usando pausas cortas o palabras inusuales, se puede detectar si la persona tiene demencia o no. En el caso de la ley neuronal, tiene un score, una base de datos de 8.3% para clasificar. Es aquí donde se necesitan más datos para realmente validar si es gente tiene demencia o no tiene demencia. En el caso de las máquinas por vectores, demostró ser mejor que la red neuronal simple. Y como conclusión final, aquí tienen que se puede distinguir si una tiene demencia o no entre las pausas o palabras confusas, el tipo de palabra, su referencia utilizada y para preguntas un poco más específicas sería más fácil contactar con Damián Solís, que es el autor original del artículo.
Ok. Entonces, ¿te podemos hacer preguntas o no?
Si hay alguna que pueda resolver, con confianza trataré de resolverlas. También muy técnicas no voy a poder.
¿Alguien quiere hacer una pregunta?
Bueno, mencionas que el parámetro para discriminar entre una persona que tiene demencia y otra que no la tiene es las pausas que dan.
Es una que le que dio más oportunidad de
Ajá.
clasificación.
Pero, ¿qué otros parámetros significativos se encontraron en los textos? O sea, en su selección.
Bueno, aquí como está en la tabla,
Ajá.
podemos ver que la parte de sujetos que tiene mayor diferencia, con demencia y sin demencia.
Pero eso
Pero
es
fuera
el
de ahí-
uso del sujeto en una frase
Una oración,
y
una
ustedes...
conversación.
Ajá. En una conversación. Pero, por ejemplo, pues por una conversación nosotros podríamos tener muchos sujetos, muchas frases y algunas frases podrían estar completas. ¿Cómo? O sea, ¿evaluaron textos completos?
8 vino la base de datos del sistema de... de Cloud Corpus Conversation,
Ajá.
es base de datos.
Ajá.
Ahí dentro conozco qué tan completas están las conversaciones.
Ajá.
Como es una base de datos que está muy restringida, para tener acceso a ella ocupas a pasar muchas pruebas que realmente vas a usar datos de forma correcta.
Sí.
Desconozco realmente qué contengan ahí.
Ok. Gracias.
Dices que el 70%, dices que el 70% de los datos fueron utilizados para el entrenamiento, pero ¿qué representa una instancia de esos datos? ¿Una palabra? Una
No
conexión?
son las conversaciones, son la frase en sí.
La conversación
La
completa.
frase. Como se dividió en frase, de aquí está, se dividieron en 256 palabras para entrenar a la red.
O sea, cada frase la dividieron en 256.
Sí.
O sea, una frase está compuesta de 256 palabras.
Aún que analizaron de esa forma.
Y una frase es una instancia.
De hecho, son unas conversaciones en totales, pero ahí digo, desconozco qué tan grande es la conversación. Sé que usaron aquí una cantidad de personas con demencia y sin demencia, pero no sé qué tan largas estén sus conversaciones. Pueden tener 2 instancias, 3 o más.
Porque empezando de la parte que hay una mayor cantidad de casos donde no hay demencia y una donde hay demencia, pues ahí ya se presenta un desbalanceo de clases.
Sí.
Hay un problema. Entonces, si no hay me imagino que la persona Solís deberá saber un poco más sobre la claridad de cuáles son tal cual las características de cada una de tus instancias y cómo está distribuida. Pero
Ahorita no puedo venir por
sí,
cuestiones laborales.
Sí, porque otra pregunta, pues, para que lo comentes, ¿no? Podría ser, ¿por qué es que creen que, o por qué la máquina de soporte vectorial tuvo mejor comportamiento que que la otra, ¿no? O sea, cómo estaban las características o cómo se estaba dividiendo esas clases para que la máquina de soporte vectorial tuviera mejores características.
Sí.
No sé si habrán realizado una sintonización de los parámetros de la máquina de vectores de soporte.
Ay, sí, ya, es una cosa muy técnica que ya no quise decir.
¿Cuál fue la motivación principal de la investigación? Yo me imagino que puede haber una motivación de tipo lingüístico o una motivación de tipo psicológico, psiquiátrico, o una motivación de aplicaciones de redes neuronales.
¿Sino que más para aplicaciones de redes neuronales?
¿Cuál?
La aplicación de las redes neuronales en un área distinta a la común. Como es un
Ya.
sistema médico, un poco más, pues un poco, ¿cómo se llama? Tabú, de si tienen demencia o no. Puede ser aplicación en una nueva área de oportunidad.
Ya, porque así como está presentado, pareciera que fuera una mera aplicación de tecnología computacional en redes neuronales,
Sí.
sin mayor repercusión de análisis lingüístico. Y sería interesante ver si se puede duplicar estos experimentos en el español en principio, y en el español hablado en México en segundo lugar, y en tercer lugar en el español universitario de la región de Querétaro, por ejemplo.
Sí, por ejemplo, ahí tienen el parte español, base de datos para clasificar esa parte. Sería
Ya.
genial la base de datos previa.
¿Podemos ver la siguiente lámina, por favor? No. Sí. Sí, por ejemplo, si uno toma las pausas que hace uno al hablar, que serían los puntos los signos de puntuación, las pausas al hablar y el texto, entonces mucha gente caería en umbrales de demencia.
Sí.
Manden fotos.
Las mañaneras serían ejemplos típicos de...
Ah, diablos.
Todo el mundo dice que está demente, algo, ¿no?
Sí, pero aquí la cuestión es más ver con un psiquiatra, que es la persona que se encarga realmente de terminar siempre sabes de mente, ¿no?
Ajá.
Porque
Ya.
ocupa el apoyo de ellos, porque esta es nuestra aplicación.
Como saber qué
Superficial.
características de una conversación, o sea, tener la retroalimentación de un experto para ver qué características analiza ese
Porque
experto en el momento de
De manera natural nosotros siempre nos damos cuenta con nuestro interlocutor cuando tiene algunos problemas de lenguaje, algunos problemas de comprensión. Sea porque es demente, sea porque se acaba de levantar y no ha terminado de darse cuenta del día, o si está bajo el efecto de algunas drogas, de algún estimulante. Eso lo podemos reconocer fácilmente. Y pensar que lo pueda hacer una red neuronal, tal vez sea capaz de hacerlo siempre y cuando se le dé un conocimiento y un entrenamiento suficiente, y eso puede ser interesante.
La relevancia de las características.
Pero también los dictámenes que dé mecánicamente un dispositivo puede ser cuestionado.
O sea, tienen que son herramientas, son más de base, no es que te digan que esté demente o no, que la parte de un experto del área.
Sí, por eso mi pregunta, si la investigación había tenido motivación de tipo psicológico o lingüístico, pero también de manera lingüística es importante. Nosotros podemos identificar a alguien que no es de nuestro medio, y por medio quiero decir, nosotros nos desarrollamos en un medio universitario o nos desarrollamos en un medio popular, en un mercado, o en un medio de una fiesta, o bien en un medio distinto al mexicano. Podemos distinguir rasgos sudamericanos, rasgos de California. En California se convive el español mexicano con el inglés norteamericano, y tienen rasgos que podemos identificar de manera natural, con inteligencia natural, de manera así muy muy significativa. Y hacer eso de manera mecánica puede ser cuestionable e interesante. Bueno, gracias.
Gracias, Alberto. ¿Tú vas a presentar el rato, verdad? ¿Sí es tu presentación? ¿En una memoria? ¿Me la puedes pasar en cuanto puedas? Ok. Alberto, Julio, Alberto, está el nombre de Daniel. Pero muchas gracias.
No.
Aquí está el reconocimiento.
No, pero trabajo con gente.
So, my name is Eduardo Rivas and I'm going to present classification of motor imagery using statistical models. This work was done together with Mario Chacon and Juan Ramirez. So the content of this presentation includes an introduction, the database that we use to evaluate our work, system design that has 3 stages: signal preprocessing, feature extraction, and a classification stage. In classification, I'm going to show you 2 classifiers, one k-nearest neighbor and the second one k-means, and results, and finally a conclusion that we got. Brain-computer interfaces in recent years have been studied as an alternative way for communication, for example, to manipulate some kind of prosthesis or to interact with virtual environment. And we can use different type of signals to manipulate that information, for example, visual evoked potential, event-related potential, or sensory model readings. That includes beta waves and mu waves, is our case. We use sensory model readings. And also, the way to acquire those signals is different. It can be with invasive methods or non-invasive methods. We use a non-invasive method that is electroencephalography in EEG. So, a motor imagery can be defined as a mental execution of a motor act with a physical action. That means, for example, if you move your hand, your brain will produce some signals. So your activity can be recorded with an EEG, but if you imagine that you are moving your hand, your brain also produces some signals. So as well can be recorded with an EEG. And what's the difference between a motor imagery and a motor execution? The main difference is that in the motor imagery case, the execution is blocked at some corticospinal level. But the regions, the functional regions related to the programming and preparation of such movements, it's equal from motor imagery and from motor imagery and motor execution. Sorry. So once we got this information, we obtain the BCI competition 3 dataset for A, and it has brain activity for 5 subjects, called AA, LL, AB, AW, and AY. They use 118 electrodes. That is a lot of information that acquired with an EEG. Each subject executed 218 motor imagery for right hand and for foot. So right hand and foot, that are the motor imagery that we are talking about. Each motor imagery was executed during 3.5 seconds with a resting time of 2 seconds between a motor imagery session and the next motor imagery session to the resting time. And the resulting signal was filtered with a bandpass filter from 0.05 Hz to 200 Hz, and they were digitized at 16 bits. It's equal to 0.1 microvolts. Finally, the signals was subsampled at 10 Hz, selecting every 10th sample. So once we got the signals, we are in condition to implement our methodology. So as we can see, there are a lot of information because they use 118 electrodes. So to decrease the dimension of the data, we select 3 electrodes using the 1020 international system. We select C3, CZ, and C4 electrodes to implement our methodology. After that, the motor imagery, as I said, has 3.5 seconds for the subject visualize the imagery for the right hand or the foot. There are 350 samples, and we select only 200 samples because the motor imagery during around 1.5 to 2 seconds, and we select those samples to extract the feature from motor imagery, both cases, foot and right hand. And for the samples of the relaxation, where the relaxation class, we obtain it with a 100 sample of the motor imagery. So we have 3 classes: motor imagery from right hand, motor imagery for food, and a relaxation class. We implement a classifier for 3 classes, to classify 3 classes. The next is to handle the information. Oh, sorry, here was an N. P belongs to natural numbers. Sorry for the presentation. The number, for handling the information, we use a matrix arrangement. Let X to be a matrix arrangement where N represents the number of samples. And it goes from 1 to 200 samples. P represents the number of epochs. As the other person said, there are a data set with training samples and validation samples. So in this case, P represents the training samples for this case. And CH represents the channel C3, channel C6D, and channel C4. And when we obtain this information, we normalize it, dividing the original signal into its magnitude. So the signal preprocessing is done. The next thing to do is the feature extraction stage. We observe the behavior of the signal in the time domain. And an important thing to say, or 2 important things, is that the VCI system was done offline. And the other thing is that all the figures that I'm going to show you comes from the Soviet AA that has the best performance. So from this slide to the others, all the information from these graphs and plots are from the Soviet AA. So we implement or obtain their histograms that comes from motor imagery hand, motor imagery food, and relaxation class from per channel C3, CC, and C4. And we observe that the shape of the D distribution is like a gamma distribution with non-zero means that allows us to apply an ICA technique. Because we make another analysis and we observe that before applying an ICA, we model the data, we simulated the data, obtaining the mean and the deviation standard, and we observe that the data are very close between them. So a normal distribution can be represented as classes, and it's like impossible to discriminate between classes because they are very close between them. So we apply ICA and we got this information. ICA, independent component analysis, is a technique where the data is linearly transformed using obtaining components with maximum independence. So in this case, before ICA, the simulated data, the normal distribution simulated data is very close between them. But after applying ICA, the simulated data again, using normal distribution can be discriminated. So as you can notice in this plot, for instance, in C3, the classes motor imagery food is discriminated from the classes hand and relaxation. And using the information from C4, relaxation class can be discriminated from hand, motor imagery hand class. So for to obtain the transformation data with ICA, we use the information from all the electrodes, but for the classifier, we use only the information from C3 and C4. And as you can see in this plot, original feature space are very mixed, or the data is very mixed between them. So using mean amplitude from C3 and for C4, it's impossible to classify between the classes. But using the classifier using the data after applying ICA, the mean amplitude from C3 and from C4 allow us to implement some type of classifier. So we go to use a clustering classifier because it's easy to use and we can observe very separated data in clusters. So in this case, we use 2 classifiers, k-means and k-nearest neighbor. K-means is a classifier, a statistical non-supervised classifier that separates the data between k clusters. In this case, k is equal to 3, so we got this. And with k-nearest neighbor, use a priori probability that that evaluates if a sample belongs or not a certain cluster. In this case, as you can see, KNN is less crisp in the clusters. For example, in this region, K-means misclassifies some samples of that, but with KNN classifier, the samples are equal to the feature space that we are wanted to obtain. So the results of those classifiers are shown in these tables. And the first one, comparison between the two classifiers and the training samples. As I said, for training stage, there are different number of samples for each object. They are different. And it doesn't mean that the higher number of samples for training, the higher performance. No, for example, subject AL has the maximum number of samples, but it got the third place in this classifier, in KNN performance. And subject AL, as I said before, got the best performance using KNN algorithm. And when we validate our results, we use the complete set of data that has 28,000 of samples. So for example, the subject AA for training stage, we use only 2,000 samples, but for validation, we use 26,000 samples more than the training stage, and it got a better performance. But the important thing here is that the average percent of performance for K-means and KNN is kept. So we validate our results doing that. For evaluate our work with other works, we select two works that are referenced here, 1 and 2. The work referenced in 1 use the same data set that we use, but they use different types of classifiers, supervector machine, k-neural net, random forest. And we compare it with this work, and we obtain the results. The average for they got around 94% of performance using k-neural network. But they use the whole information that dataset provides us. So they use information from the 118 other drugs, and they classify between only two classes, motor imagery hand and food. And we implement a classifier that classifies between three classes, motor imagery hand, food, and also a relaxation class. And we use only the information from 3 electrodes. So we think we are competitive with those works. And the work done in 2, they implement a similar methodology. They use also an ICA transform to extract features, but they use a supervector machine, but they got 77% of performance, and we got better. They use 4-channel EEG, and we use 3-channel EEG. So as a conclusion, in this work, it was designing a methodology to classify 2 motor imagery classes, hand and food, and the relaxation class of different subjects. The features used to classify the samples were based on statistics and an ICA transformation. The classifiers were based on 2 clustering algorithms, k-means and k-neural network. The maximum achieved the KNN achieved a maximum performance around 90%, k-means around 85%. Also, the proposed method achieves competitive results compared with other work reported in the lecture brochure, as I said. And as a future work, it is expected to include more features to improve our performance, and also to implement it in real time or maybe online, because it's difficult to implement in real time. So it's all for me, if you have a question.
Okay. Questions? Please.
Which software tools did you use? Did you program all the classifiers from scratch, or did you use some packages?
We use MATLAB, the software that we use in MATLAB, but the classifier was done manually, like we make a force and something like that to implement KNN and k-means.
And which was the average sizes of the images?
It wasn't images, it was data. So it was like a matrix. number of the sample that varies from subject to subject for 200. So one image is from 3 to 200 in the area matrix arrangement.
200 what? Which units?
Uh,
200 pixels or what?
yes, it's like a pixel because it's a sample. So it's a sample, it's a data, one data. It's an enrichment from 3 to 200, like an image.
Uh-huh. And finally, how did you measure the performance? You mentioned that K-means was 82% and the other technique 96%. But with respect to what did you count this percentage?
The dataset has a ground truth, so we compare our result to the ground truth the dataset has.
Ah. Okay.
Thank you.
Questions?
How was validated the data set?
For training and validation.
Yes. And the other words, how was made?
Okay. The dataset was divided by the dataset provides all the training samples and the training validation samples. For example, the whole dataset has 28,000 of samples, and it's different from subject to subject. For example, for subject AA, it has 16,000. So the rest, the 12,000 samples, are from validation. So it's different from subject to subject. And the other works is the same dataset, and they did the dataset. So it's different because they did their own dataset. And the things to compare here is the methodology that they used and that we used.
Any question? Okay, let's say thank you to Alberto Rivas. Eduardo, sorry.
Yes.
A recognition for you.
Thank you.
We are 2 minutes in advance, but we are going to start. And let's welcome Marcela Marquez Navarrete. She's going to present inferring functional dependencies from similar functions in a crime database. Please start.
Good afternoon. Functional dependencies can be used to establish relations between attributes in a database. Also, it can be applied to data mining, data cleaning, clustering and prediction, query optimization, and design normalization of relational database. These characteristics are what make us think that we could obtain information on a crime database to know and get knowledge about which conditions entail violence and crime. The database to be analyzed is this one that contains crime occurrences in the municipality of Nezahualcóyotl, Mexico during the years 2016 and 2017. It has over 16,000 tuples and 13 attributes, which tells information about the type of crime committed, location, and time and date about this crime. Before talking about our main results, I'd like to talk about some basic definitions. Let U be a finite set of attributes to A1 to AN. A relation over U is a set of tuples to from H1 to Hn, where Hi is a function that goes from U to the union of the domain of every attribute. Then a functional dependency is an expression to the form X arrow A, where X is a subset of U and A is an element of U. Then X functionality determines the attribute A. X is called the left-hand side of the dependence, and A is called the right-hand side. And we say that a functional dependency holds if for every pair of tuples in the relation, the left-hand side have the same value in that attribute, and also the right-hand side have the same value in that attribute. We say that a functional dependency is minimal if A does not depend functionally of any proper subset of X, and X arrow A is trivial if A is an element of X. When we can say the problem statement that is that given a relation R over a set U, determine all minimal and non-trivial functional dependencies that hold in R. This is the problem of inference dependency. Well, we can think in a brute force algorithm to solve this problem. That is, take a relation and store in a set F all functional dependencies non-trivial that you find, and doing this for all for the power set of all attributes in that relation. The problem is that this algorithm has a complexity exponential over the number of attributes. So a better form to do this is using, for example, the Tain algorithm proposed for Hutala in 1999. What he do is arrange all the attributes in a lattice like this, and then start to prune for every level, verifies if the functional dependency is valid, and if does not, then you prune all that supersets that contain that functional dependency that is not valid, and then you reduce the search space. To verify if a functional dependency is valid, it's used equivalent classes and partitions. Then, two tuples are said to be equivalent if they have the same value for an attribute. Then a set of all tuples that have the same value for an attribute, it's called the equivalence class, and the set of all equivalence classes for that attribute, that is denoted B of X, is a partition under X. It's just necessary to have the same cardinality in P of X and P of X period A to have a valid functional dependency. But to find functional dependency also is very important before attempting to infer any meaningful relationships in a sociodemographic database that are particularly prone to have anomalies to get the database clean. It have missing errors or lexical errors or domain format error. One example of this is these three tuples that have a domain format anomalies. They are not in the correct form, so we use Python pandas to solve this problem. We put the data in the same format and separate the time to have exactly the same format. These are three examples of functional dependencies in the CRIMES database. We use inexact functional dependencies, but they have some problems. One of them is that these relationships could be deemed as obvious. For example, a coordinate sector. Some dependencies are just valid because the attributes are forcing that to have just an unique tuple, and most important, that even the slightly differences in how is written a database can prevent for a dependency to be found. Then to solve and overcome these problems, we propose using similarity functions. A similarity function is a function that goes from the Cartesian product of x to the positive real numbers. The similarity functions have the following properties. A non-negativity, that is that the similarity between two elements must be greater or equal than 0. Maximility, that is that the similarity between the same element must be greater or equal than that element and another. And the property of symmetry. We talk about that Tain algorithm use partition and equivalence classes to create functional dependencies. So we can construct the equivalent classes using similarity functions, just taking a threshold to say if two attributes are similar enough to be part of that class of equivalence. One example of how we used this extended Tain algorithm is, for example, in this database, the IRIS database contains taxonomic information about 3 types of IRIS plant. Then we can see that these 2 rows that have the same value in petal length and petal width are preventing to find the functional dependency petal length and petal width that gives class. And we can see in this plot of cluster information of IRIS dataset that it could be enough just have the information of petal length and petal width to obtain the class. So we made some experiments from taking the threshold from 0.05 to 0.40, and we find this functional dependency at a value of 0.25. Also, this algorithm can be used to detecting anomalies in a database. For example, in a crime database, we expected to have the functional dependency quadrant gibbous sector because it had this pattern, C01 gives 1, C02 gives 2, but it wasn't found. It wasn't found because the database might have some errors. So we apply the Tain extent with a similarity function, the damage time, with a threshold of 2, and we found this functional dependency. So, as conclusion of this work, sociodemographic databases are very prone to have several errors, and inferring meaningful relationships is very hard. The exact functional dependencies cannot adequately describe relationships in databases that have only similar values. And it's possible to extend the Tain algorithm to use similarity functions. And also, it can be used to perform automatic knowledge discovery and verify the correctness of data. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? curiosity, and this methodology can be applied for another database, so it's very specific.
No, it can be applied to any database, but it's very important to take in account that the nature of every database is going to take different problems to get functional dependencies. For example, this problem of data cleaning before obtaining any knowledge.
Okay, and I have can also is a curiosity is in the slides 13. Will you explain me please the functional dependency here, because you only like these are like examples and
Okay. For example, we find this functional dependency that is with the coordinate, the latitude and longitude of the place where the crime was committed. We found something that I said that was very obvious, that we found the sector in which is divided the place where the crime was committed, for example. Or, for example, this one, the end time and coordinate, give us the crime type, but this one is not because you are going to know that in certain places at certain time is going to be committed a crime. It's because it's so specific that you are going to find just one record that have information of this. Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, the question here is that all the information should be put in a relational database.
Okay.
It cannot be applied in a non-structured information, but it should be structured. And yes, for one particular kind of database, one can have a functional dependency that it could be hard to be generalized. But however, for this information, the algorithm will provide valid databases. So it seems strange for this third rule that at a given time, in a given geographical position, you can have a type of crime. So violations, rapings, or car hurting, maybe localized. It's hard to say, as say Marcela, that with high probability, if you go somewhere at a given time, you will be suffering a crime. But however, it has happened in these statistics that this dependency was proved.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I will give you a recognition. The recognition.
Hello, again. I represent my partners in the school because his work is so can keep here. Well, introduction is an optical flow. What is optical flow? It's a pixel in two images similar but not same. For example, in this video you can see a similar image but illuminated is different. The optical flow is only focused in the pixel on the first image. It can found in the second image. The pixel is found in the same position on the other position. And for the mathematics, if the image is converted to the gray instance because it's very easy. In other words, the convert to the gray is only values in the 0 to 225. values. On the color is had three space color, while the red, green and blue is for. In this case, it's very complicated. For easy, it's only the gray instance. And the laptop use is a MacBook with a user processor at the 1.1 GHz with Intel Core M3 and 8 GB on the memory RAM. And in the Intel HD graphics, Markov random file model is a function is described to the optical clock with the energy in the pixel. This is important to know the instance factor, neighbor factor, and distance factor. The optical clock is used for the 3D reconstruction. These are the key points for the dense correspondence of the output between the two consecutive frames in the time. Instance factor. Distance factor is compared the one pixel in the image original with the second image. And the equation is the IPIG is the pixel you found in the second image. In the I' and PA plus FIG, FIG is the matrix for the second image, where I and J is the height and width for the image, and the alpha is a tolerance to have a bigger or smaller difference with the low energy. And then the distance factor. Distance factor is the different positions for the pixel original in the first image. In this case, it's similar to the FIG and the error beta. And what beta defines so they have bigger or smaller distance with low energies. And the neighbor factor is important because the neighbor is different in different cases. For example, in 4 neighbors, 8 neighbors, different configurations of neighbors. In this case, he used the 8 neighbors. In this is what FIG, FNIG, well, is only for the compared neighbors in the 2 images. For guarantee say the pixel found is the same for the pixel original in the first image. And the complete is that the energy is in this equation, but has a factor distance, neighbor factor, and the intensity factor. And the stochastic rendezvous is for the method of the minimized for energy. In this case, the equation is similar, but these are derivations for. You remember the derivation is used for the you found the minimum side or maximum side a function. In this case, it's minimum side, and use the W side plus Lagrangian for the gradient in X and X and Y, because it's the matrix of the image. The algorithm used is this. This first is initiated by the constant, example of the error with a 0.001. Epoch limit is the 100. The alpha is 0.99 and the beta and lambda is at 0.9. This value is used for the risk for the Barrett and mirror value. and next is select the image and select the second image. Then next is the start to the just circular form, because remember the fifth image you can find one pixel, and the second you can find similar pixel in our position and the similar position. You can record all methods. In this graph, we can see the minimum size obtained with the X and Y. And in this case, is the found on the pixel. For example, in this case, you can see in the 125 and 155, it's very similar. For the neighbor, it's not the same, because also the algorithm is not found at the other pixel. You finish in the epoch 200, and this is the pixel converted is found in the second image. The first image is for the mobile cam. You can find 1400 with a 1000 iteration epoch. And the second image, you can see a 3500 in only 80 epoch. The other difference is the second image is used for the Canon T3i. In this other mobile cam is a little epoch, it's 80. We can find a 1600, and the second is only use a webcam. Similar, use a 70 epoch and only 500. In this table, you can see a different comparing the 4 image reviews with a laptop camera and resolution, total pixel, and point convert. It's very important because a more resolution, the pixel convert is more. Culture War is compared with other methods because the time is a little time. The other is concurrent programming, because in this case the algorithm is sequential, and use color scales, because the different color you can have more information for the pixel or the neighbors. Use a different click on neighborhoods, because the units on 8 neighbors, you can see 4 or more neighbors, or different configured neighbors. The conclusion is simple, because the mean size of the gradient descent is used for the mean size for the Markov random file function. That is only also the optical flow is it's hard for the method of the illumination. Sorry. Distance factor and interaction limit is the second point considered, because a more epoch, the point convert is more. It's not important the resolution of the cam. And the regularized very similar pixel instant to convert with the optical flow value is not accurate. But in other words, the optical flow is very extensive, but the point or the pixel is the same in both images. The reference use, and if you have many questions, you can contact this author of the paper.
But it's possible to have questions? Oh.
In this case, it's no because it's the other area for me.
It's complicated. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, a small one,
A small one.
simple one.
Just about the technologies used to program the optic flow.
Can you repeat, please?
Hmm?
Can you repeat the question, please?
The technologies used to program the optical flow.
Yes, because it's the, well, in this case, it's the MATLAB.
MATLAB?
MATLAB.
Okay, thank you.
Another question? Simple one? No? Okay, so let's say thank you to Julio Alberto, but the recognition is to Luis Rogelio Roman Riviera and
Yes.
collaborators. Thanks a lot.